Final match is underway with the sacrifice of a Misty Rainforest. Ingram down to 19. We'll see what land he does search up here. An Underground Sea to start things off.
And Reid's list, game one, completely creatureless. His win conditions, a couple copies of Entreat the Angels, 4 copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Ingram with a Deathrite Shaman.
You know, BBD's list, he likes Stoneforge Mystic. Joe Lissette, a couple Snapcasters, a couple clicks, maybe a Venser.
Yep.
Reid, no creatures in the starting 60.
Don't need no creatures. Ingram will draw a card. It's a copy of Wasteland. A card that's not great in this matchup.
Because Reid is touching red, his deck is a little bit more non-basic dense than your blue-white builds, but he's still relatively immune. He has 3 plains, 6 islands, and a mountain, and has enough basics in his list where he feels comfortable sideboarding Blood Moon.
Yeah. Ingram going to sacrifice a blue to Delta, go get himself a tropical island. And now it's time for Dark Confidant. So Duke is going to be put to the test here pretty early. Very good card, that matchup.
This may be the most troubling threat that Peter brings to the table if you're Reid Duke.
This is an attack for 1 with the Deathrite Shaman. Duke is down to 19. Duke will draw. Miracle's offline at this point. And that is a Flooded Strand. So it's 18 all, and we'll see what land Reid wants to search up. Again, he's so basic heavy, it wouldn't surprise me to see him just go get a basic plains. Again, his non-basics, 2 Tundra, Volcanic Island, and a Caracas, and there is a basic plains.
Bug Delver, naturally 4 copies of Wasteland. Reid's deck needs to make a lot of land drops along the way. It's a huge cost for him to get tagged by a Wasteland, so I think he's going to be as careful as possible, trying to fetch up as many basics as possible, trying not to run his fetch lands into Stifle, which Peter is playing 3 copies of in the main deck.
Swords takes care of the Dark Confidant. So away that goes. And over to Ingram, we do go for his 3rd turn of the game. Picked up a copy of Stifle. You see the Wasteland there still. There's also a Forcible hiding out in the grip. And all Peter's going to do is pass the turn back with the ability to activate a Deathrite Shaman. You saw him very carefully not play the Wasteland, doesn't want to give away that information.
There's nothing he really needs to make a land drop for. He's got 3 mana in play between the 2 lands and the Deathrite Shaman. His deck stops at 3 mana with True Name Nemesis unless you count hard casting Force of Will. So he can afford to hold the land back and try to bluff Reid.
Swords of Plowshares is going to go bye-bye. So Duke down to 16. There's a copy of Delver of Secrets. Reid wondering how many cards Peter has in his hand. Looks like 4 or 5. We're going to go with a counterspell. The old Natural.
Yep. An Ice Age counterspell. I'm sure Reid was probably playing with this when he was 5 or 6 years old.
We have a bit of a battle over this. This is a Forcible, I believe, removing a Stifle from Ingram, so he needs his Delver of Secrets in play, he feels.
Not clear how much better this Stifle is getting also.
So counterspell is counterspelled via Force of Will. Ingram will pass the turn back over to Duke. Duke will take a draw here. No Terminus. Flooded Strand was actually the draw. You can see a copy of Council's Judgment in the grip now for Reid as well. And it looks like there may be a copy of Jace the Mind Sculptor as well.
Got to be happy with the pacing of the game thus far if you're on Reid's side. He's been able to make his land drops uncontested. Peter not really up to very much thus far. Only a couple of cards left in hand. We know those are Abrupt Decays. I'm sure Reid's making an effort to not run a counterbalance into it as much as possible. Probably shovel them away with Brainstorms and such when he gets the opportunity to.
Duke very careful once he does sacrifice that fetch land. Wants to make sure that he can play around Stifle, make sure this does resolve, but it's good to go. That's a basic plains again, no surprise. Want to make sure that Wasteland is textless in this matchup.
There is a red elemental blast in Reid's main deck. So hypothetically, somewhere down the line, he wants to get red mana. But in terms of everything else in the deck, he can cast off double blue and double white.
It's Council's Judgment time. It's time for the will of the Council. Peter is going to respond by activating Deathrite Shaman. Remove the counterspell. Make Duke lose 2 life. Put him down to 13. And now Delver of Secrets will lose the vote. So away that goes. Ingram will untap and take a draw here. It's a copy of Ponder. Get him a little deeper into his deck. That will resolve. So Peter will take a look at a couple of cards, Force of Will among them.
And it's unrealistic for Peter to be able to win this game on the back of a lone Deathrite Shaman. He needs more help. The problem is he doesn't have any counter spells left, so he's at the mercy of Terminus at that point. And this is the squeeze that the blue-white-red Miracles deck can put you in. You play one threat, Reid can either set up something more powerful or just pick it off with random removal spells. You try to develop a big board, and then Terminus sweeps it all away.
Decisions. Leave it on top. Take a draw. Spell Pierce is what he's found. I wonder if it's time to play that Wasteland. Not yet.
The Wasteland still doesn't open up anything. His hand is very colored mana intensive. So he has Spell Pierce in hand, and he can choose to Spell Pierce or Deathrite, but adding the Wasteland to the table doesn't do anything. Same with the multiple copies of Abrupt Decay in his hand.
And if you're Reid, you could probably deduce a little bit what's going on with Peter's hand. You know, the texture of it. He's not really doing very much. I wonder what's in his grip.
It has to be reactive. If he had something like Tarmogoyf in play instead of Deathrite Shaman, maybe you could guess there's some creatures there because you have a sufficient clock. The pacing of this game right now is not favoring Peter. He would add more threats to the table if he could, so you can safely rule that out. So that leaves lands, counter spells, and things like Abrupt Decay.
It's an attempt to chase the Mind Sculptor. And I'd say that's worth Spell Piercing, wouldn't you?
Yes.
So back Ingram's way we do go. He knew he was going to draw that Force of Will, as he did keep with the Ponder. Now, if you're looking for positives for Peter Ingram fans, you know, one thing that Reid doesn't have right now is a Sensei's Defining Top.
Yeah, he's still playing what amounts to be a fair game. I like playing the Wasteland in this spot. Now that Reid has all of his colored mana in play, hard casting Force of Will should be something on Peter's radar. So I liked holding it for as long as he did, hoping that Reid might trip up and get a Tundra or Volcanic Island. But now that Reid's assembled this particular mana base, it's good to just put it into play.
I see the hoping that Reid trips up strategy.
Listen, you gotta try what you can, you know?
Ah, yes. A winning move. Many have taken that line and many have failed.
You can only play the cards that are in your hand. What are you gonna do?
That's a counterbalance. If you're Peter, you don't mind.
Sweet.
Yeah.
You hope Reid's hand is nothing but counterbalances.
Yeah. This Abrupt Decay stinks. Now it does something. The question is, does he want to use it now, or does he want to activate Deathrite Shaman now?
I think for the time being, I would just activate the Deathrite Shaman.
He's going to go with the Decay.
Unless you're actually trying to free something up. I guess this allows Peter to draw something next turn and cast it.
Yep.
Although Reid would be flipping blind in any case. And Peter drew True Nemesis, so paid off nicely for his use of Abrupt Decay.
Yeah. The question is, does he try to cast it here? It looks like the answer is no. So Duke will untap and take a draw here. This looks to be a miracle, and he's going to say, hey, you know what? Sure, I'll cast Terminus. And that's going to take care of the Council's Judgment. Duke's going to go down to 11. It's a good thing Ingram didn't deploy that True Name Nemesis.
Yep, the pacing of everything thus far has been really good for Peter. He can get this True Name into play. Puts a lot of pressure on Reid to find specific cards. Entreat the Angels, can't block it naturally. Source of Plowshares doesn't kill it.
But he will wait and pass the turn back over to Duke, who will draw a card. This is a copy of Counterbalance. Again, Peter does not care. He has another copy of Abrupt Decay in his hand. And I imagine he will use it, and he does. Ingram will draw a card here. And what I imagine Peter's doing is saying, hey, I need another blue card so that I can Force of Will whatever your answer may be to this True Name Nemesis. Try to protect that thing and get in 4 shots with it to win the game.
Terminus or Council's Judgment. There is a second copy in Reid's list, so.
And I believe the second copy may be in his hand right now, because he does have 3 mana, and there is the second Council's Judgment. And I think this is going to be a pretty quick Force of Will removing Daze, and there that is. So we'll see if this resolves.
Peter definitely has a plan.
That's a Brainstorm in response. That's Duke's last card.
Again, Reid does have that main deck Red Blast, which would be a backbreaker right now.
2 cards go back very quickly. All that stuff resolves. There's a top. That's not so bad.
I'm sure the first card Reid would have liked to find there was the Red Elemental Blast. I believe he will settle for Sensei's Defining Top.
Hard to pass that up. You saw the exchange on the stack again. Council's Judgment gets attempt at Force of Will. Reid says, I'll Brainstorm in response. Put 2 cards back. Leave the top in my hand. Brainstorm's unresolving. Force of Will resolves on the Council's Judgment. And here we are. An attack for 3 puts Duke down to 8. It's a 3-turn clock. Ingram will just pass the turn back. But before Reid untaps, he says, I will spin my top for the first time this match. Untap and draw. Not a miracle. It's a Brainstorm, though. That's good to go. So Reid will take a look at 3 cards.
I think there may be a Terminus in that top 3.
And he will plan carefully here. Again, he gets to keep 1 of these, puts 2 back, and then if he chooses to spin the top, he gets to see a new 3rd card down.
Yeah. Slowly, excruciatingly can look at 1 fresh card.
And he does just that on his main phase. Gonna reorganize things a touch here. Put that back. And kick it back to Ingram. And right away, Duke says Terminus. This could be maybe a Stifle for Ingram on the Miracle trigger, perhaps.
Now, Reid is doing this in the upkeep to prevent Peter from drawing the Stifle you just alluded to, or a 5th land alongside Force of Will.
That's good to go, though. True Nemesis is going to go to the bottom. Ingram draws his card for the turn. And all he can do is pass the turn back over to Duke. And you can see the construction of Duke's deck really paying off here. 6 basics in play.
And I think that may be... No, that isn't even close to all of them. There's still 4 more islands in this list. Never mind. But all the plains and the mountain are in play right now.
When you just think of Legacy, you don't think of decks having 10 basics that are 3 colors.
Well, 2.5.
Sure.
Not really a 3-color
Yeah,
deck, you know?
you're right about that. You're right
You can
about
play
that.
games without red mana.
Here's a Tarmogoyf. They're going to count it up, see how big that Lurgoyf is.
I'm guessing 6, 7 is my guess. Almost.
It's all right. You're new
No
here.
creature, but Planeswalker plus enchantment.
Yep.
Alongside the stock land, sorcery, and instant.
Yep. Reid will spin. Terminus is what he has found yet again. Such a powerful card in this deck. He's already cast 2. He might be casting his 3rd one soon. He is at 8. 2 hits in that Tarmogoyf. This game is over. And Duke will pass the turn back. Over to Ingram. And on the upkeep again, he's going to activate the top. There is Terminus, and he will pay the miracle cost of a single white mana. So bye-bye Tarmogoyf.
Reid really needs Peter to miss 1 or 2 draw steps. There is, some risk of Reid not being able to cobble together answers in time if Peter presents a steady stream of creatures. But if he misses for, say, 1 or 2 turns, Reid's likely to be able to assemble something with that Divining Top to lock this game up.
You may wonder, why is Peter sacrificing this blue to Delta right now? I think for a couple of reasons. One, he likes to take a land out of his deck, and that's a small percentage game. But put the Tarmogoyf and the True Nemesis back in, because drawing those right now is actually pretty good.
Deathrite Shaman as well.
Yeah.
They've all been Terminused away. So normally I like holding onto the fetch land there. I don't know what the numbers actually bear out to be on the top of my head, but the fact that so many of his good draws are on the bottom of his deck means that he has more of an incentive than he normally does. Normally you just want to hold on to that, so if you draw a Brainstorm or Ponder, you can make it more efficient. But a lot of the quality cards in Peter's deck are on the bottom.
Ingram going to play a Flooded Strand here. That's land number 5 for a hardcast Force of Will. This is the Sensei's Divining Top. And Peter's going to give this some thought. And I like this simply because even if he doesn't have Force of Will, it's the thought that maybe I do have a Force of Will.
Well, I don't think Reid's buying it. I think that would definitely get Force of Will if that was the card in Peter's hand.
There's a Scalding Tarn. That'll allow Reid to shuffle his deck if he doesn't like what he sees on the top of his deck. And he will sacrifice this right now to play around Stifle. So that's good to go. Reid will get a basic island. Again, 6 of those in his main deck. Ingram will draw a card. It's another land, a copy of Misty Rainforest. The only spell that he currently has in his hand is a copy of Spell Pierce.
And this feels like the turn in which Reid is going to take this game over. He can miss with the Divining Top for a little bit, I suppose, but
he does get to see 3 new ones, and I think one of those cards in that 3 was a copy of Entreat the Angels, I believe, but we will find out here as Duke does draw a card. That's island number 4. That's a Jace the Mind Sculptor. And things are taking a turn. That's in there. Jace is going to brainstorm. So 3 cards here for Duke. As usual, 2 will go back, 1 will stay in the grip.
And now with Divine Top plus Jace, a lot of Peter's draws, even his creatures now, aren't very valuable. It's True Name Nemesis or bust in terms of productive draws from this juncture.
All Ingram can do is pass as Duke will spin the top. It's time to brainstorm again. Wants to get a huge advantage maybe before starting to Fate Seal.
And he's picked up a red Elemental Blast and a Force of Will. A commanding hand.
That might be the check mark in this game. A copy of Dark Confidant isn't the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's not great either. Ingram will deploy that. And Duke can decide if he wants to hardcast Forcible. I imagine he senses some weakness here from Peter.
Now that he has a red Elemental Blast as insurance against True Name Nemesis, which is the primary concern at this point, he can be a little bit more liberal about using some of his other counterspells on other things. He still may be fine letting this resolve and just say, okay, I'll unsummon it with Jace and correct my draw with Sensei's Divine Top. But I feel like there's a strong argument for using a counterspell here. Just want to keep brainstorming.
Duke will cast Forcible in the Dark Confidant, with, of course, enough mana to pay for the Spell Pierce. So all systems go as Reid will spin the top. We'll draw a card. We'll cast a Brainstorm. Time to set a couple cards back here in just a moment.
One of which is Entreat, which looks like it's going on the top.
Yep. Ingram will draw. Copy of Deathrite Shaman is what he's found. But that one's a little... Yeah, I mean, that did resolve. I'm not sure Duke cares all that much, especially when he has Entreat on top of his deck.
Yeah, I was going to say that at this point, a resolved Entreat, not a lot for Peter's deck to do about it. There's no copies of something like Maelstrom Pulse.
And Reid says, I'm going to activate the top. And let's make some angels, shall we? He'll make 3 of them. Doesn't need to really make any more. He wants to be able to cast Red Elemental Blast if a counterspell shows up. Here's Spell Piercing. He wants to be able to pay for that.
Also, the last turn when Reid went and Force of Willed the Dark Confidant, with 3 mana left over, Peter didn't do anything about it, so he can probably assume that whatever disruption Peter has in his hand, it does not allow him to play over the top of 3 untapped mana. So Reid just setting up the same stage there.
A small smirk from both Duke and Ingram as Duke does win game number 1 over Peter Ingram. Blue, white, red, Miracles, up a game over Bug Delver. We'll take a look at the sideboards in just a moment. We're actually going to bring it back to the booth here very quickly because we do want to ask our trivia question one more time. Matthias and I asked one after the first game of the last match, and so we're going to ask the same one again because our semifinal is kind of long.
Yeah, sure.
So
takes a while. You might be hopping in just now. Maybe you're a Reid Duke fan.
Absolutely.
Maybe you skip incorrectly, skip the Tom Ross match.
He's right.
Et cetera, et cetera. So we'll run it back.
Very simply, in Tom Ross's deck, even though he is playing a lot of Infect cards, one of the mechanics from New Phyrexia was Phyrexian mana, and he does have a Phyrexian mana spell in his deck. The question is, which one is it? Again, he's got a lot of Infect cards, but not a lot of Phyrexian mana spells. So if you can name the Phyrexian mana spell in his deck, hashtag the answer with the hashtag of SCG Premium. Make sure you're following an SCG Live, and again, we will announce the winner at the conclusion of our semifinal round. And now we will take a look at the sideboards of this other semifinal match here between Duke and Ingram. I believe that things get a little bit better here for Peter. He's got 2 Graph Tricker's Cages, a Needle, 2 Disfigures, 2 Diverts, a Flusterstorm, a Force of Will, a Gregarian Charm, a Spell Pierce, a Vendilion Click, 2 Maelstrom Pulses, and I think most importantly, 2 copies of Thoughtseize.
He does improve a little bit here with those cards. He can bring in the Thougseizes, the Vendilion Click, the Spell Pierce. Flusterstorm is good against certain elements of Reid's deck, not good against others.
Yep.
I still think it's probably worth bringing in. I think the one Pithy Needle will definitely come in as a great answer to Sensei's Divine Top. So these are some nice tools. On the other side, I believe Reid picks up the best card in the entire matchup, which is 2 copies of Blood Moon.
Yep.
He has a Grafdigger's Cage, a Tormod's Grip, a Baneslayer Angel, a Rest in Peace, a Blue Elemental Blast, 2 Pyroblast, a Red Elemental Blast, a Spell Pierce, 2 Vendilion Click, Supreme Rogue Terminus. So I think Reid's going to want the additional 2 sweepers, the 2 copies of Vendilion Click, the Spell Pierce, the Red Blasts are all reasonable. The Rest in Peace will come in as Peter's threat base, very graveyard-centric, Tarmogoyf, Deathrite Shaman. But the 2 copies of Blood Moon, this is something that Bug Delver cannot function against. When it enters play, whatever Peter has on the table, that's what's there. And
if he's able to get a little creative and float some mana to cast Abrupt Decay, that's one thing. But you know, the thing that I think that's actually really tough here for Peter is that I think there's a world where Reid is like, I'm going to board out my counterbalances because you have Abrupt Decays. And Peter actually has to leave his Abrupt Decays in because of Blood Moon.
I believe those will be the first cards that Reid cuts in this matchup.
Counterbalance?
It's too hard to establish the lock. Post-board, Peter even has answers to Divining Top, much less Counterbalance.
Okay.
You also don't know, Peter may be bringing in the Golgari Charm as well to go more answers to Rest in Peace and Blood Moon. So I think those enchantments are going to be the first thing to leave Reid's deck. But you're right, Peter has to leave an Abrupt Decay because there is the threat of Counterbalance, and these other enchantments that Reid's bringing to the table are problematic for him as well.
Game 2 underway here shortly for you guys. You just see both players are shuffling. Now let's not forget the winner of this match plays against Tom the Boss Ross. But the winner of this match will be headed to our Players' Championship, as Tom already has an invite, so the invite will pass down.
An incredible accomplishment for Tom. Back-to-back finalist, potentially back-to-back winner.
Here's the thing.
It's hard to imagine that record ever getting touched if that happens.
I love Jerry. I do. Love him to death. One of my best friends in the entire world. Back-to-back open wins is really something. Back-to-back finalists of the Invitational, or potentially back-to-back winner, I think that's the best thing we've seen on the Open Series.
And if I'm being honest, I think Tom's got a good matchup against either one of these players.
I think so. I do think so.
I'm really worried about Peter's matchup here post-board because of the Blood Moon. The thing is, it's a totally tertiary plan for Reid. He doesn't have to Blood Moon lock him to beat Peter. He can just win a normal game like you saw in Game 1. The problem is that Peter has to respect the possibility of Blood Moon at every juncture of the game, and if he doesn't, he can just lose outright at a moment's notice.
I am in agreement with you.
He doesn't need Blood Moon to win. Reid can go, punch for punch with Bug Delver.
He just showed that.
Yep, and exactly, it was a game where he didn't have Divine Top for a very long time. Was just able to, and Peter's draw was fine. He flooded out a little bit towards the end of the game, but Peter's draw overall was fine. Reid was able to win a conventional game, but now with Blood Moon, there's going to be a percentage of games he just gets to cheat.
Well, game number 2. Peter Ingram will be on the play. Hey, he's got an uphill climb, but I think he knows that.
Yeah.
Not saying he can't win. He beat Miracles. Shiho Yin was playing it, so he can do it, and Shiho had Blood Moon as well.
Like I said, 75-75. I'd rather have Peter's list in the matchup. But that's a little bit different when the two players are actually on the table,
Tough to argue. Tough to argue. Peter looked thrilled to you?
That is a look of a man very happy with his 6-card
Looks like a snap keep to me. Now, maybe I'm a little rusty with the body language.
Yeah,
I'm taking mulligan.
The thing is that Bug Delver really, there's no way for him to bluff a capable hand because he has no nut draw.
Yeah.
It's just lands and spells or a mulligan. So if you tank forever and say, I keep with a really good hand, it's like, okay, it doesn't even, it looks no different than what your bad hands look like.
Down to 6 he goes. Look, you can't keep a hand like that when you contort your face in such a way. Come on. There's no way he's keeping that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. No one likes mulliganing, but send it back, OP boy.
There is a moment where I went over to the feature match area on my break. Gerard Fabiano playing the Standard Potion. Historically, not someone who likes to mulligan.
Nope, never.
Draws up his opening hand, and it's 3 swamps, 2 Mutavaults, a negate, and a Pithing Needle.
Snap it off.
He looks at the hand for a long time, mulligans, then looks up at me and says, only because you're here. Just a wildly unkeepable hand.
In Underground C, it's how we'll start it up for game number 2. Duke with an island. He'll kick it back over to Ingram. No top again. That's a small victory for Peter. Here's a brainstorm.
The smallest of victories.
Yeah. Duke, Pierce hits.
I like this very aggressive use of Spell Pierce on an opponent on 5 cards.
Yeah, I would too. There's a brainstorm. So 1 and 2 and 3. Wasteland among them, but we know that Wasteland's not so great. It's a fun, this is the magic of live television right here.
So the fire alarm is going off in the building.
It sure is.
Not really sure how this gets resolved.
Play on. That's what I would do. That's what we're going to briefly do. We'll see what we're directed to do here by Jared Silver, our tournament director, in just a moment.
I know that the Duke is unfazed.
No, the Duke will play and continue to play very well. So as soon as we're told what to do, we will do it. Oh, look at that.
All right, well, we'll be back in a bit.
Yeah, let's bring it back to the booth because I guess we'll be back in a minute. Live television, what do you say? They're trusting enough to leave their legacy decks just there on the table. It's bold, but I like it.
Both players appearing pretty nonplussed about the whole thing.
Unfazed. It's like nothing happened. Peter just going to play an Underground C, kick it back to Reid. Whatever. Just some sirens and some noise.
So as a refresher here, Peter did mulligan to 5.
Yeah.
Pretty low on resources, no pressure.
But did just draw Delver Secrets, so that's a place, at least a place to start.
It's a thing.
He did try to cast a Brainstorm, but Reid did Spell Pierce that, and then Peter dazed to that. So that's really all the action that's happening in the second game, and now Peter's going to deploy the Delver off the Tropical Island. Let's see if Reid has maybe a permission spell or just a removal spell here, but he's going to draw a card. Let's see if maybe he finds a Terminus. Well, that looks like a miracle to me. Shrugs his shoulders, says, sure.
That's now a move. We saw in game 1. The draw a Terminus while you have 1 creature in play, Reid Duke, shoulder shrug.
Yep.
Might as well, I guess.
Copyright that. An island and kick it back. Over to Ingram. You see an Abrupt Decay over there? A card that, again, I don't think is great in this matchup, but I feel like it's a card he probably has to leave in. Here's a Dark Confidant.
I can see him going down to 2 or 3 copies, but I don't think he can get away from it altogether.
Yeah. Blood Moon is a real pain, so he has to leave some number of those in because he can't beat a Resolve Blood Moon unless he's already in a favorable position. Here's Dark Confidant. We'll see if Reid's able to find an answer to that, as that's a card that can pull Peter ahead here.
Curious to see what's going on with Reid's hand here. Not a lot of action thus far, and plenty of opportunities to cast stuff.
Sacrifice a Flooded Strand will do. It's a Plains. Reid already has quite an advantage as far as cards are concerned in hand, so Peter really needs this Confidant to get back in the game.
It's his only piece of pressure, his only source of card advantage.
Is it the Mind Sculptor? It is. Ingram does have a Spell Pierce. And I think Reid's got himself Red Elemental Blast potentially here. Very quickly sacrifices that Scalding Tarn. We'll see what land he searches up.
Well, he doesn't need triple white or triple blue, so if he can afford to get this mountain, he will. And I believe this means it is Red Elemental Blast. Or one of the sideboarded Pyroblasts.
Yep. Either way, I don't think the Spell Pierce is long for this world. There is the Red Blast. So goodbye, Spell Pierce. Jace the Mind Sculptor's in, and the elevator goes down a floor to get Dark Confidant off the table. Ingram will draw a card. It's a copy of Force of Will.
Now, Reid plays with enough Ice Age and 4th edition cards that I believe these are original Duke family heirlooms. These may be the original cards. That a younger, but I still presume deep-voiced Reid Duke played as a child.
Duke will draw with an active Chase. Again, wants to keep that confidant contained. It's one of the few ways he can actually lose this game.
It's not an emergency situation just yet.
Yeah, not like the fire that we just had.
He doesn't have to contort very much to get out from this confidant. He can afford to brainstorm here. He's still way ahead on cards, but the sooner that he can answer this, the better.
We're going to, of course, put 2 cards back here. See a Caracas among the cards that he's drawn. There's an island. That's, oh boy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh boy. That's a Baneslayer Angel. There's a Force of Will. Oh, the Slayer's going to the bin. And this is a little interesting. There's a Thoughtseize.
Peter's got a little something going. He can get the Jace off the table this turn with the Confidant.
Yep. And he's going to fire off the Thoughtseize. And Jace, Caracas, and a Scalding Tarn. He's going to take the Jace. He's going to kill the Jace with a Confidant. We might have ourselves a game here.
Yeah, if Reid's floating a Entreat the Angels, this is still big time trouble for Peter, but on the face of it, it looks like we got a game going.
That's quite a shift. Having the Force of Will for the Baneslayer Angel, because the Baneslayer Angel's in play, that's it.
Yes.
This game is over. No way for him to get that off the table. I think maybe he has a pulse. He's got a pulse on the board.
He's got one pulse on the board. That's it.
But Ingram did have the force for that. Able to kill. Now here is a Entreat, and he's playing around Spell Pierce. You got to know it. Now the question here is, can Ingram beat 2 Angels? I actually think the answer is yes.
He has an Abrupt Decay.
Yeah.
So he can handle one of them. And he's got his Confidant going. So he can flood the board. He can find another Abrupt Decay.
There are the Angels. Entreat resolves. Duke always playing around Spell Pierce. We'll deploy a land here. Last card in his hand is the Caracas. Ingram's going to get to trigger Dark Confidant. Tropical Islands, no damage. See what he draws here. A Daze, not great in this situation. So there's the Trop. I imagine Peter isn't thrilled that he has to kill one of the Angels like right away, but at the same time, this is a 2-turn clock that the Angels put on.
He's going to have to do something about the first one.
Yeah.
If Reid attacks with 1, I'm not sure which one Peter will choose to Abrupt Decay. That's a decision point, but I don't think Reid's going to get to untap with both of these Angels the following turn.
Peter giving this a lot of thought, but Reid is going to untap now. Time for him to draw a card. Oh boy.
All right, well, never mind.
Yeah. There's another copy of Entreat the Angels. So Reid had back-to-backs. And again, he's able to pay for Spell Pierce again with the 2 mana available. So he set that up beautifully, even though he did lose his Jason. The other one got Thoughtseized. Everything's A-okay for the Duke.
Although I think Peter's draw last turn was Daze, which alongside the Spell Pierce in hand means he can fight over this Entreat.
So there's a Spell Pierce. Reid's going to sacrifice that, but I have a feeling... No? Okay. Yeah, no response necessary for Peter yet. Right. He's going to pay for this now. Now here's a Daze. Pick that up. And so Entreat gets countered. And he still has the ability to Abrupt Decay one of these Angels. And he's going to do that. So Ingram's going to go down to 12. You see Duke's at 17, but Ingram is fighting back here.
I understand that Peter didn't have Spell Pierce Daze last turn, so just run back the same turn that you had. But that might have been a little bit of greed from Reid there. I don't think he needs the 5th Angel to win this game. He may have been able to err on the side of super caution there and only Entreat for 2.
Ingram going to reveal a Needle. Down to 11. Boy, does he need that another Abrupt Decay, though. It's a copy of Wasteland. That one's not going to help very much. There's an attack for 2. Duke down to 15. Wonder if he wants to play the Needle now. I like playing the Needle now. We'll see what it's going to name. You know, he's got the options between Jace and Sensei's Divining Top, but 2 Jaces are already gone.
I would imagine this is going on Divining Top.
Again, we'll get confirmation as soon as we do know. Let you guys at home know.
And we still haven't really discussed this very much. It hasn't come up. Remember, there's still 2 Blood Moons hanging out in Reid's deck, and those are game over if those come up.
Well, and he doesn't even top of the Needle. I think Peter's over Blood Moon. If you got it, you got it.
I'm not saying there's anything Peter can do differently.
Yeah. He's at 6 now. Now he's down to 4. There's the answer.
That's the big draw right there.
Though, Ingram's life total is pretty gosh darn low. So now we get in the situation in the territory where Bob could just kill him.
Which is a pretty humiliating way to lose the counterbalance.
He'll pass the turn back. Duke will draw a card. It's an attack for lethal, but Abrupt Decay takes care of that. Duke will pass the turn back. What do we got now, Peter? Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
It's getting hairy.
Down to 2. Draw a card. It's a copy of Ponder. Well, he can control things a little bit.
Ponder is a reprieve. That's almost the best back-to-back draw you can get. You get another piece of pressure, and the Ponder will allow you to potentially find action and make sure that your next draw step is not lethal.
That's our good friend Tarmogoyf.
Although what's really funny is if he ponders into 3 awesome pieces of action, he has to shuffle.
Yep. Ingram, got to play. The Underground Sea. Use one of them. He'll ponder now. Brainstorm, Delver. A couple of nice ones. I wonder if he's willing to go to 1.
Peter's working with a lot of unknown information here. He can take the Delver, leave Brainstorm, but there's no guarantee that he'll be able to Brainstorm in such a way to prevent the Dark Confidant from killing the next turn.
Yep.
Because I do not believe there's a land in the 3 cards he's looking at right now.
The question is, does he have a land in his hand? Which I think he does. He could put that back. He can get mighty creative here. He's gonna keep it. Draw. Goyf. Deathrite. Okay, that works because he can gain life off of that.
Yeah.
Assuming that there's a creature in the graveyard. Let's see what Duke draws. Well, this would be a heck of a game for Reid to lose. He's just going to play a Plains and pass the turn back.
On this 5-card hand from Peter.
Trigger. Again, he knows the card that's on top of his deck.
If he knows he's not dying, it seems like you just untap and let the Deathrite Shaman activate against Reid.
Yep, there's Brainstorm. He's down to 1. He draws a Delver now. Tarmogoyf's a 5/6. You throw in the attack with Dark Confidant as well. That's an attack for 7. Duke's down to 4. Deathrite essentially provides the lethal. Now, keep in mind here, Ingram is at 1, so Forcible with the alternate casting cost is off. And I don't believe there are any creatures in the graveyard. Again, Terminus takes care of the creatures. Swords removes them from the game. You know, Terminus puts them on the bottom, Swords removes them from the game, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
What's Duke draw? A Caracas that he had for a while. He plays that. Ingram. He's going to activate Deathrite Shaman. So it looks like, okay, the Baneslayer Angel.
Yeah.
Up to 3. A little smaller Tarmogoyf, but Peter's at a safer life total now. He's not going to Brainstorm just yet.
Yeah, I think the problem with Peter going activate my Deathrite Shaman, untap, shoot you for 2, untap, shoot you for 2. Reid with the trigger on the stack could hypothetically go Vendilion, click, plow it, and then your Dark Confidant trigger could kill you.
Yep.
So Peter taking a slightly safer approach.
He can get a little creative there. Brainstorm is going to be targeted by Pyroblast.
Uh-oh.
There are cards that Peter Ingram can reveal to lose the game right now.
This is Force of Will.
That is a Spell Pierce.
Oh.
He is safe. He goes to 2. He'll draw for his turn. It's a copy of Brainstorm. It's an attack for 7. It's us heading to a 3rd game. It's tied up here between Peter Ingram and Reid Duke. That's a hell of a game for Ingram to win.
On a mulligan to 5, too. But Reid drew quite a bit of lands there. Never found a Divining Top. Later on in the game, it wouldn't have even mattered because Pithing Needle had that locked up.
Wow, wow, wow.
It all comes down to, that turn where Reid entreated for 3. Possible he could have afforded an entreat for 1 less to play around the unlikely scenario, admittedly unlikely scenario, that ended up manifesting there.
Yeah. Whew. Well, I wouldn't have it any other way. Whoever wins this match is headed to the Players' Championship. So let's make it a good one here. You see the sideboards there. You mentioned the Vendilion clicks that Reid could have possibly had there. He's got 2 in his sideboard. We know about the Verdict, the Baneslayer Angel that we saw come in. The 2 Blood Moons put a huge tension on this match for Ingram. But if you're Peter, you got a match, man. I barely got out of that one alive.
Yeah,
I
but
feel
still,
like I stole one.
on a 5-card hand, you know, it's already hard sitting down there to think you got much of a shot to win the game.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like Peter's start was anything great. I mean, he drew up an opening hand where he had a brainstorm, no pressure. He had to fight over a brainstorm with no shuffle on turn 1 just to kind of get the ball rolling a little bit. But Reid never really found his own brainstorms, couldn't get the binding top online, and drew a lot of lands.
Yeah. That second and Shrieking Angels, had he played around Spell Pierce and Daze, and you know, that's tough to say. But as you mentioned, does he need that additional angel?
It's hard to say because the last turn, the previous turn rather, Reid did it with 3 mana up, and Peter said that resolves. So in your head, you're thinking, okay, I can just run this back. It's going to resolve again, and that's going to be enough. But in that scenario, to me, it feels like either Peter has Maelstrom Pulse, and it doesn't matter how much you entreat for, or he's dead because he can't really beat. It's not even clear if he can beat one more angel, you know?
Ingram's Daze, I thought that was going to be a poor draw, and ended up saving him and potentially winning him the game. Some favorable bob flips there as well, as he could have died to that. But one heck of a game for Peter Ingram. He could have been down 2-0 there very, very easily. But now it's 1-1. Maybe we'll see a smile from him. Who knows?
And, you know, I mentioned this several times on the broadcast. This is a matchup with a lot of play to it.
Yes.
This is one of my favorite matchups in Legacy to watch because there's a lot going on both sides of the table.
Duke will be on the play this game. And of course, we do want to thank you guys for joining us right now. Over 10,000 viewers watching Reid Duke battle Peter Ingram. The winner of this match, well, they got to try to stop the boss.
And now Reid's turn to go back.
Down to 6 very quickly. Ingram says, I will keep. So he's got 7. I'll tell you, I remember at the beginning of game 2, Peter Ingram did not look happy with anything that was happening.
But that was not an easy game to win. That said, you saw Peter's best tool in the matchup on display. That's Star Confidant.
Yeah.
Reid, not flush with a lot of answers, 4 copies of Swords to Plowshares, 2 Council's Judgments. He can sweep it away with some of it with his sweeper effects. But that game it went unchecked, and I don't know how many cards it drew Peter there, but definitely more than the 2 he was down from his initial mulligans.
So we'll see what Duke finds here. Again, Ingram, multiple Grand Prix top 8s for him. He certainly has had some success playing Magic. Not as much as the player he's playing against, but few can top what Reid has done over the past couple of years.
Also, his second consecutive invitational top 8.
Yes,
We've been talking a lot about Jared and Tom being 3, which is incredibly impressive.
We can't forget that Reid's won one of these things too.
Lost in the shuffle of all of Reid's accomplishments is his second consecutive invitational top 8. This is his 4th invitational top 8 overall, and a former champion as well.
Yes, sir. Taking a long look at those 6. He's the one that doesn't look thrilled now. And it's an Arid Mesa, so he will keep. I wonder what land he's going to search up here. Does he go non-basic? Goes with just the mountain.
Whoa.
Oh.
This may be the opening of a man on a Blood Moon plan.
It's very telling. As Ingram, I believe, is just going to play Tropical Island, maybe pass the turn back. We'll see. And shuffle Reid's deck here very quickly.
I suppose it could just be a Red Blast, and he doesn't want to get stifled here, so he's fetching as soon as he can.
Island, kick it back.
But I have rarely seen Miracles go turn 1 fetch for basic mountain.
Looted Delta. You see a stifle there in Ingram's hand. Smart play by Reid to sacrifice that fetch land right away. Ingram maybe trying to get a little creative by bringing Stifle back in. Maybe he boarded it out. Maybe he boarded it back in for this game. Who knows?
It has a little bit of utility here. You know, Miracle Triggers, Fetch Lands, Jace Activations. None of these are great things to be fighting over, but it does have some targets in Reid's deck.
Duke with just the plains. He'll kick it back over to Ingram. Ingram draws a Daze for the turn. There's a Wasteland. He'll pass back, but no pressure here from Peter yet. That's what he's missing. He's got Brainstorm in his hand. He got a nice reactive card there in Stifle, but no pressure. Duke with no fourth land. We'll pass the turn back over to Ingram.
But still, as long as it's going like this, with Peter not pushing him around at all, Reid's okay with this early development.
He does have ways to break serve, though. Card like Vendilion Click will probably force the action from Duke. And there's a Misty Rainforest. Pass the turn. Duke will draw. See if he can find a fourth land here. We'll tap that island for something. Yeah, maybe not.
He would like to find his fourth land here, but dropping the shields down on blue mana could be really dangerous. Peter's on 7 cards in hand. All of his mana up.
There's top. Had to decide which mana to use. You know, of course, white mana can be for Swords of Plowshares. Red mana can be for those blast effects. That's Spell Pierce. Reid immediately pays. Ingram looking at a Daze and a Spell Pierce. He will use the Daze. Pick up the Tropical Island to cast it. So he wins the fight over the top. And now Peter's going to sacrifice these 2 lands. And we might see the Vendilion Click now.
And so far, so good for Peter.
Yeah. Underground Sea. It looks like maybe going to get both of those. Could get a Trop here, and he actually will get a Trop instead. Split him up a little bit. May want to know what's in Reid's hand here. Again, click gives him the information of what's in the grip. Also gives him the clock. And there it is. Take a look and Entreat the Angels. A Blood Moon. 2 copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor, Pyroblast, and a Volcanic Island. Part of the reason Reid not playing the Volcanic Island, doesn't want to lose to a Wasteland.
Reid may have been trying to set up for next turn where he could try to land Blood Moon with Pyroblast back up. Now that option taken off the table if Peter so chooses.
Tough decision here for Ingram on what card to take from Duke's hand. He's going to say the Pyroblast pretty quickly, actually, after writing down the goods. Mystery card coming there for Duke. So Ingram's going to untap, and he'll draw a card. Misty Rainforest is what he's found. He'll start by attacking for 3. Duke's going to go down to 16. Maybe Ingram wants to cast a Brainstorm here, get some more action. He's still got that Stifle.
Yeah, the start's been really good for Peter, but he still probably needs to follow up with something else.
Well, there's a Ponder. So we'll take a look at a couple of cards. A Force of Will, a Daze, and a copy of Underground Sea. Looks like he's happy with what he sees. Needs Force of Will on top. Going to add that to the grip. There's the protection. Looks like he was looking for.
These are not bad cards for him to keep here, but he is liable for this click getting killed and then not having much going on.
So I'm playing Misty Rainforest that turn instead of the Tropical Island that Reid doesn't know about. You have to imagine it's because he likes to sacrifice away those cards from the Ponder. Shuffle those bad boys back in, find something new for next turn. Duke with a Jace. Deciding that he does need to put into play the Volcanic Island. Now this gets interesting. See if Ingram has any interest in letting this maybe resolve. You know, if Duke were to bounce the Vendilion Click, for example, he can just replay it.
Well, Reid could Fate Seal with Jace and get to next turn with it. So I think this is worth a fight from Peter.
Peter could get really cute. He's got that Stifle. Yeah, he lets it in. I wonder if he's going to... No. Now,
the issue here,
now he's checking.
The problem here is that adding or subtracting loyalty counters from a Planeswalker, that's part of the cost. You can't stifle the +2 and have the 2 loyalty go away. You can prevent Reid from Fate Sealing with the Stifle, but those counters are on there now. And this might be the little crack in the door that Reid needed to get back in this game.
And Ingram, you saw him just shake his head a little bit. I think he realizes it's a mistake. And it's a mistake in multiple ways now. And here's the reason why. Reid knows about the Stifle now, too.
Yeah.
And now Peter's going to ask a judge exactly how this does work. But as you mentioned, adding the loyalty we believe is part of the cost. So I know what Peter was thinking. I let that resolve. I stifle whatever you do, and then I kill your Vendilion Click. But I don't think it works that way.
Yeah.
If it had, it would be a brilliant play from Ingram.
And now we're in the spot where even if Peter untaps and attacks the Jace with the Vendilion Click, Reid's still going to get to untap and Brainstorm. He can Fade Seal another time, move back up to 4. Now it's outside of click range again. I mean, there's all sorts of cascading consequences for this.
This changes the way that Ingram has to play the game in a big way. And now Ingram drew a card for the turn. He drew the Daze. I imagine he played that fetch lane with the intentions of sacrificing that away, maybe, and doesn't want the Daze. Not 100% positive on that, but I don't know how good the Daze is here, and if that was part of his plan either.
I think Daze is fine in this spot if you're wastelanding Reid anyway, especially with all the other counterspells in hand. He also has a Force of Will too, so he can afford to take a gamble on a high upside, high risk blue card, because the worst case scenario is that's the card that gets pitched to Force of Will.
This game has taken an interesting turn. A game that Reid looked to be very much in trouble in. Well, now he's got a Jace the Mind Sculptor in play, and the elevator's going up to 4, so he'll Fate Seal himself. He's going to give this a thought. Now, one thing, again, if you're Reid, Peter has given away a lot of information about that last turn, so we'll see if Reid's able to play around Stifle appropriately.
That's part of the reason here that Reid is Fate Sealing. One is Fate Sealing's pretty close to as good as Brainstorming from a selection perspective. Second, he knows that Peter has to Stifle, so if Reid were to Brainstorm, Peter stifles it, untaps, and finishes off the Jace. So at the minimum, he wants to absorb another attack here. He can then untap and Brainstorm, draw out the Stifle that way, but this way he at least saves 3 points of damage and gives himself another opportunity to draw a removal spell for the Vendilion Click.
So a little mini game here of trying to take down Jace and making sure that Reid doesn't get much of an advantage with it. Reid's going to draw a card here after Jace says to go down to 1. You saw him play Scalding Tarn last turn, but no interest in sacrificing that just yet.
And now I think there's a good chance that Reid opens on Brainstorm.
Yeah, and there the Brainstorm is. You see Reid going reaching for his deck, and it's going to resolve. So perhaps Ingram feeling that Stifle is reserved for that Scalding Tarn.
Well, he's kept the Daze, so there's extra incentive for him to be attacking Reid's mana. But letting Reid look at 3 fresh ones, it's not even just the fact that Reid's drawing 3 cards here. It's that he's also resetting the top of his deck. He may have drawn some inefficient cards over the course of the last couple turns here that will get to shuffle away. Maybe Miracles he gets to set up. This Jace has done all sorts of work on top of saving Reid 6 points of damage and allowing him to Fate Seal some inefficient cards to the bottom.
It's about to be 9 points of damage. Now we're going to have a fight. Probably with this Vendilion Click, and I imagine Peter is not happy about this. So here's a Pyroblast. And you probably have to have the fight over this because you need to kill that Jace.
He's got nothing else going on.
Yeah.
His hand's all reactive.
So here's a Brainstorm in response. Let's build a stack, shall we? 1 is Dark Confidant. 2 is Abrupt Decay. 3 is Misty Rainforest. Ingram's got to put 2 cards back.
Pyroblast on the screen there, autographed by yours truly. My biggest Magnus accomplishment. Reid Duke asked me to sign a card once.
You ever even cast that card before?
Pyroblast?
Yeah.
For sure.
All right.
I've used it to target many cards, limited to, not limited to Psychotog, Chill.
Oh, Chill. Hello.
Yeah. Gotta get that one.
Absolutely. So the Brainstorm resolves. You see Duke's going to shuffle the deck. Ingram able to make it a very good Brainstorm. Now here's a Force of Will. And again, I imagine this is not the kind of card that Peter Ingram wants to Force of Will. And Duke is going to sacrifice a Scalding Tarn here. Will Ingram stifle?
He can, but Reid's got a backup fetch land. There's not a lot to be done. The game is now very much being fought on Reid's terms, where earlier, that exchange with the Vendilion Click getting into play at the end of the turn, the game felt like very much in Peter's control, and now...
the mighty counterspell. Ingram will fight back, however. There's a Spell Pierce. Duke will try to sacrifice. Ingram says, 1 moment, please. I would like to stifle this if you don't mind.
Now this is a legacy stack right here.
Let's build a stack. Stifle resolves. Ingram wins the war. Ingram draws for his turn. Bye-bye, Jace. He'll kick it back. Here's the thing. We know Reid has another one. Or at least we believe that he does. He did when Ingram looked at his hand. Reid will draw a card for the turn. There's a Flooded Strand. Sacrifice that. And we also know that at one point, Reid had a Blood Moon.
And if Reid is main phasing this fetch land right now, I think this might be Blood Moon.
Play around Spell Pierce?
Yeah, I think we might see it.
Perhaps this is the battle that Reid wanted all along. 3
Oh,
mana very quickly. That is a Blood Moon. Peter Ingram has to let it resolve. No more spells for Peter besides Force of Will. In for 3 comes the click. Duke will draw.
Can he kind of find an answer, though? He needs to find it before Peter finds a blue card also.
Duke.
Uh-oh.
There's that Jace. Does Ingram have a blue card to go along with his Force of Will? The answer is no. Pick that up.
And the lock is in.
You, Peter Ingram, you don't get to play any more Magic. Reid Duke wins game number 2 here over Peter Ingram. A Blood Moon and a Jace, and a slight misstep from Ingram leaves Duke 1 game away from our finals.
Got a little too fancy with that stifle.
Yes, sir.
Thinking that maybe it would go to only 3 loyalty. Goes up to 5. And that Jace did some heavy lifting.
We are playing some Magic here in the
Yeah.
semifinals between these 2 players. Yes, we are. You see the sideboards there on the screen. We'll see if either one goes back to the drawing board. You can see Ingram is a little upset at that mistake, shaking his head. He wants this. He's got to get through a great player to get to the finals, though.
Especially on the heels of winning on that 5-card hand in game 2. That's a heartbreaker to let get away from you.
Winning on the heels of 5 cards, Vendilion Click getting in play, and you get to see your opponent's hand. You take the Pyroblast away, you've got an idea of what they're working with. But again, he got a little too fancy with the Stifle. Didn't work the way that he thought it would. If it works the way he thought it does, it's a great play.
Yeah.
It did not work the way that he thought it did. The game, the dynamic of the game changes drastically, and Reid able to take advantage.
Like I said, a lot of play to this matchup.
Yes, sir. Game number 4 will be underway in just a bit. Of course, again, the winner of this match will play against Tom the Boss Ross, our reigning invitational champion. He won Season 2. He's looking to win Season 3 as well. These players are going to take a short moment, which means we can come back. We can say hello to us, Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, Star City Games Open Series here in New Jersey. It's been fun so far.
And Reid 1 game away from locking up a spot in the Players' Championship.
Yeah. Again, he's playing Miracles. We've got Ingram on Bug Delver. A lot of play in this matchup, as you did say. And you can see, and this is why I love Magic, those, razor thin edges, those minor decisions. I thought this worked this way. You saw Peter, you actually saw like him go through the process of just like, oh, I'm going to get him with the Stifle. And then Reid puts it up to 5, and I imagine he's like, wait, oh no. Go over to the judge. Does this work? The judge is probably just like, not good for you, man.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
Good.
We see this, and it's not the first time we've seen that kind of interaction.
Yep.
A lot of times people will play Jace and immediately Fate Seal because they're worried about Lightning Bolt.
Yes.
And there's no opportunity to respond to this.
Yep.
And it's the same scenario, basically. It's the same thing as, say, paying mana, paying life for a spell that asks you to pay mana. It's part of the cost of resolving the effect. And once Reid announces, all right, I'm going to plus Jace, it's too late. It's up to 5. And your Stifle, yes, you can stop the Fate Seal from happening, but you can't prevent the loyalty from going on Jace. And the cascading consequences of that decision, I mean, Reid got to, the click had to hit Jace 3 times, I believe. Mm-hmm. Reid got to Brainstorm.
That's 9 points of damage.
9 points of damage, and Reid got to Brainstorm. That's a huge, I mean, you can't even quantify that. That's a huge swing the way the game plays out. Yeah. And I think that Peter has a very good shot of winning that game if he just fights a conventional fight over Jace, uses a Spell Pierce or a Daze or some such. But instead thought that that was the spot where he could cash and Stifle, and he could not.
Yeah, it's a completely different world if Ingram's up 2-1 here, for Reid and Ingram.
Yeah.
Both of them, how they're kind of approaching this match, maybe how they're approaching their sideboarding, but it's the other way now. Duke is up 2-1. It's, this is why I love Magic. This is why I love doing this, is because, they're, you hear that sometimes, well, it didn't really matter what I did. I couldn't do anything. I just lost. That game is a direct opposite of that. That small error.
Every time we've had Tom Ross or Reid Duke on camera this weekend, it has felt like it has mattered.
Yes.
The decision trees that they've executed, the missteps their opponents have made, it felt like it's all mattered. And I think that it's easy to get hung up on the things that happen to you that are unlucky, missing land drops, mulliganing, bad matchups.
For sure.
And, you know, you and I were as guilty of it as anyone else when we're playing competitively. But when you take a step back, you watch these matches at the highest level, you can sort of see, yeah, sometimes Reid misses land drops and dies. Sometimes Reid floods out and loses, like you saw in that game. Sometimes, you know, Tom Ross gets locked by a turn 1 Blood Moon with his Infect deck. These things happen to these players the same that happens to anyone else playing in the Legacy Open or anyone else playing in the Modern IQ or in PTQs or Magic Online or whatever. But you get to see what separates these kind of players from the rest of the field in these games, and it's not a small margin. It's substantial. And with a game with as much randomness as Magic, it's telling that these same players, you know, we see Reid in his second straight invitational top 8, Tom Ross in the finals, third consecutive invitational top 8 in the finals for the second consecutive time. Jared Betcher, Rookie of the Year, third consecutive invitational top 8, so on down the line. It is in the details, but there's points of damage and turns all around you, and it's just an issue if you can find them and take them.
Yeah, and again, that slight misstep is the difference between Peter Ingram probably winning that game and losing it. Now he's got to recompose himself, right, for game number 4. He was this close to being up 2-1 over one of the best players in the world. Now he can't lose another one.
And the tools were there.
Yes.
I feel like in that third game, it's not clear to me if he just fights over the Jace. I don't think he necessarily wins the game. There's still a lot of game left to play, and his draw is very susceptible to the click just dying and retaking over from there. So it's not a lock. But certainly his chances are much higher than in the world where we just saw where that Jace got into play, was around for 4 turns and did all sorts of damage to Peter.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. Back to the match, we're going to go. Game number 4 here between Ingram and Duke again. These guys from a relatively same area. They're up in the Northeast. They don't live too far from here again. Duke from the Sugarloaf area. Not too far for him, neither for Ingram. See both players. Well, Ingram is ready to go, and Duke will shuffle up. And we'll have game number 4 here for you guys in just a moment. But it's been a lot of fun to watch thus far. I've enjoyed these 3 games greatly. Ingram played a very nice game 2 to get himself back into it. And a slight error in game 3, and you've got Duke ahead 2-1, but Ingram on the play for game number 4.
And now I'm interested to see, that was a pretty long game. We saw Reid bring in Rest in Peace against a similarly graveyard-reliant opponent. But I wonder if Peter's deck, because he has Dark Confidant, because he has True Name Nemesis, because he can win without his graveyard, and True Name and Dark Confidant are among his better threats to begin with, did Reid not even bother bringing in Rest in Peace? I think that's potentially the case. I mean, there is only the 1 copy in the sideboard, so it's possible the game went on for a very long time and just didn't happen to come up. But
very realistic.
Reid may not, because Peter's deck is definitely equipped to win without access to the graveyard. I wonder if Reid's not even bothering with Rest in Peace.
Ingram gonna take a look at the 7. See if he likes what he sees. Duke will take a look as well. They're happy. Game number 4 underway. It's a ponder to start things off here for Peter Ingram off a tropical island. Brainstorm, Delver of Secrets, and a Misty Rainforest is what Ingram does take a look at. He's going to Abrupt Decay and a Tarmogoyf from the grip for him. A couple of lands there as well. Looks like there may have been a Golgari Charm too. Again, he has to be so wary of a card like Blood Moon that he has to leave those enchantment destroying effects in.
It's the toughest part of the matchup, I think, from Peter's side is Reid doesn't need it to win, but if it ever happens, Peter instantly loses. It's really hard to play a matchup where, your opponent can go punch for punch with you and win, even if they don't draw their best card or resolve their best card. And if it ever comes up, you instantaneously lose the game if you have no board.
As we saw in game 3.
Yeah.
Ingram going to sacrifice Blue to go get himself an Underground Sea. Looks like he wants to maybe lead off with a Tarmogoyf. Perhaps that's the bait. You did see a Delver of Secrets and a Dark Confidant in his hand. So the Lurgoyf is here. It's just a boring old 2-3, but it can get big pretty quick. Duke will draw a card.
Because of the possibility of Rest in Peace and because of a need for general mana efficiency, I think this is the threat that Peter is most happy to lead with. It frees up him to play a Delver and use other things for his mana down the line. It also means if Reid uses a Source of Plowshares on this Tarmogoyf, it means a Rest in Peace several turns later matters much less. He's shown a lot of respect for Reid's reactive elements as it pertains to creatures. I think a lot of people in that spot would just snap off the Dark Confidant, hope that Reid doesn't have Swords of Plowshares and gain a big edge.
Yep.
Peter's playing these teams working under the assumption that Reid has something going on and is trying to bleed out his answers and eventually get his best threat to stick.
We saw the kind of work that Dark Confidant can do if it stays unchecked for a couple of turns in game 2.
Yeah, it was Peter's 1-game win of the match thus far, and it was on a 5-card opening hand.
Duke does sacrifice the Arid Mesa. Here's an island. That's a Brainstorm right now.
This is some pretty odd sequencing, and to me indicates that Reid has a Terminus in his hand already that he's trying to set back on top of the deck.
At the very least, it'll make you as an opponent think, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, what is that all about?
You're going to Brainstorm after you fetch?
On your main phase, okay.
It'll make you think. All right, pass the turn back. It looks like he may have considered casting the swords there. Maybe a top, who knows, but maybe he's playing around days at this point. Would love to get into the mind of Reid Duke. There's an attack. 3-4 coming in. Duke's going to go down to 16.
Also because Reid didn't fetch on turn 1, where he's fetched before out of fear of Stifle, I think that indicates that he may have a pretty land-heavy hand, and he's committed to playing around days. So even if he had something left over, a Swords of Plowshares, essentially Divine Top, I think the way he's playing this game is to try to minimize the impact of days from Peter's side of the table.
Ingram looks like he wants to play a Dark Confidant. But you can tell this is a player that's very unsure of himself, but he will deploy the 2-1. Duke with just that lone Plains. That's got to be a Terminus, yeah.
I'm not a big fan of this Dark Confidant here from Peter because Reid's sequencing last turn was so bizarre that to me it can almost only mean that Terminus was in his hand already and he was trying to set this up. Maybe you want to add a Delver of Secrets to your board. That's totally fine. I can get behind that.
But not Bobby.
But not Dark Confidant. This card's too important. He's now in a position he has Brainstorm left over. He can brainstorm. He cannot Brainstorm into days because Reid can pay for it. If he played Delver of Secrets, at least he would have the chance to Brainstorm into Spell Pierce and fight over this Terminus.
And he's going to go Brainstorming right now.
I mean, he almost has to find 2 Dazes or a Force of Will right now because I don't think he can survive this Terminus. Just does not have a lot left over.
So 1, 2, and 3 cards coming for Ingram. Of course, going to have to put 2 back here. But there's a Spell Pierce among them. You see a True Name, also a Brainstorm. None of those cards are Force Will, so those creatures are going to go to the bottom of the deck here momentarily. We'll see what Ingram wants to put on the top of the deck to resolve the Brainstorm.
Also because he had Golgari Charm, I guess it doesn't matter against Terminus. Against other sweepers, he could have regenerated. But the point remains he could have Brainstorm for some of his soft permission and been able to fight over this Terminus. Now he's down his best threat card and only has a Delver to rebuild with.
So that was all on Duke's draw step, the Miracle Terminus. That's a Flooded Strand. He'll kick it back. Over to Ingram we go. Brainstorm the draw. There's a Trop. This is a True Name Nemesis. Will this resolve? Now what you guys can't see there maybe is Duke is tightly gripping a Blood Moon, maybe both copies. Now Ingram may be considering dropping that Delver, but he won't. So Duke is going to sacrifice the Flooded Strand, and that's going to resolve. No Stifle here. We'll see what land he wants to search up. It'll be a Plains.
True Name Nemesis is one of the more awkward threats for Reid to handle here because he can't Blood Moon and then follow up with a Jace or an Entreat to lock the game up. He has to kill this via Terminus or a sideboarded Supreme Verdict, which is a little bit more complicated.
Duke will draw a card. Not a miracle there. And we're going to try to lock you up. Here's a Blood Moon. Ingram with a Spell Pierce. Duke got a way to fight back. Yes, he does. Well, Peter.
All right, just me and you, buddy.
Me and True Name. Let's see if we can get it done. Duke down to 12. Duke's going to draw. It's an island. This is a council's judgment.
If this is resolved, this is game over.
Ingram going to look at his hand. He wants to know how this works. It's pretty clear. If this resolves, my friend, it's lights out.
You vote and Reid wins the tiebreaker on the vote.
Ingram looks at his hand. You see the Charm, the Delver, the Brainstorm. None of those cards are Force of Will. He says, get that off of my table. Duke with the top.
This is the full sleeper hold.
I don't know
it's
how
just
much.
an issue of when Peter wants to tap.
Yeah, I didn't know how
There
much
it
longer
is.
he'd want to go. And Reid Duke wins this match over Peter Ingram 3-1. He's headed on to the finals, but more importantly, he is now qualified for our Players' Championship. That's number 6.
And what a 6th person to add. This is incredible. Reid was a player where entering 2014, he was on the kind of outside looking in
Yep.
of